Which do you think is the creepiest unsolved mystery of all time? Case 1. The Istal Woman. She is known somewhat cryptically as the Istal Woman or the Ice Valley Woman, a name derived from the place where she was found on November 29, 1970, in the remote Istalen region, meaning Ice Valley, in Norway. It was meant to be a temporary name, a placeholder while her identity was investigated. That name has never been replaced because, despite international efforts by police, journalists, and amateur detectives, and despite being the subject of a successful podcast, the Istal Woman remains one of Norway's great mysteries. So, who was the Ice Valley Woman? Was she murdered? And if so, by whom? On the morning of November 29, 1970, hikers in the Istalen Valley near Bergen, Norway, stumbled upon a distressing scene. A woman's body lay sprawled across some rocks, burns across her forehead rendering her unrecognizable and destroying most of her clothing. Other items such as jewelry, a watch, and a broken umbrella were arranged around her in what some have described as a ritualistic tableau. The police searched the scene but found nothing to determine her identity. In fact, this seemed deliberate, with great efforts made to remove all marks and labels from her clothing and belongings. Despite her severe injuries, the police estimated that the woman was 5 feet 4.5 inches tall and between 25 and 40 years old. She was believed to have brown eyes, a small round face and small ears. Her long dark brown hair was tied back in a ponytail. The autopsy would later reveal that the Istal Woman was burned alive, with her cause of death being a combination of this and the ingestion of a large quantity of sleeping pills. While authorities initially viewed the case as a complex suicide, others believe her death in Istalen was caused by someone or something else. As the investigation progressed, things only grew stranger. 2 suitcases in the lost luggage department of Bergen's train station were thought to belong to the woman, as her fingerprint was found on a pair of glasses contained within. However, despite the clothing, wigs, cosmetics, and other items inside offering hope of potential clues, all of these had been stripped of labels as well. Curiously, a coded note was found in one of the suitcases. When the code was finally deciphered, it turned out to be a list of places where the woman had stayed. The more evidence the police uncovered, the more it seemed the Ice Valley Woman had been involved in some form of espionage. They learned she had stayed in several Norwegian hotels using a variety of false identities and passports, frequently requesting room changes. She spoke English with an accent, using some German phrases. People often remembered her, describing her as having an affluent and cosmopolitan air. A witness reported seeing a woman walking through the valley pursued by 2 men, noting that none of them were dressed appropriately for the harsh conditions. The most common theory holds that the Ice Valley Woman was a spy. In the context of the Cold War, her strange death, array of aliases and disguises, and hotel stays paint a picture of someone hiding in plain sight. Popular opinion within this field considers her an Israeli spy, as the Mossad was known to be active in Norway in the 1970s. However, this now seems less likely as her DNA profile, later published, showed she was likely of European descent. Others think she might have been working for a radical leftist group. Other theories speak of government cover-ups or organized crime, but beyond speculation, no comprehensive theory has gained traction. Decades after she was found, the Istal Woman continues to capture people's imaginations. With advances in technology, the case was reopened in 2016, leading to a series of new discoveries. Isotope analysis of her distinctive teeth suggested she was born between 1926 and 1934 and had dental work done in South America, Eastern Europe, or Central/Southern Europe. The latest line of thought places her age closer to 40 than 30. Despite the use of modern technology, the case continues to baffle both authorities and the growing number of people who have turned their attention to the mystery. The police still hope to solve the case, and authorities have not lost hope of uncovering the truth. The Ice Valley woman's DNA remains on file, with one potential avenue of investigation being a cross-reference of her DNA against global DNA databases. Today, her remains are buried in an unmarked grave, her zinc coffin designed to prevent decomposition. The mystery, however, lives on. Case 2, the Hinterkaifeck Murders. I believe the chilling story of the Hinterkaifeck farm murders is a deeply terrifying mystery. In the middle of the night, a family in rural Germany was brutally murdered, and their farm was plagued by strange occurrences leading up to the crime. It was a cold, quiet night in the small village of Hinterkaifeck, Germany in 1922. The Gruber family, consisting of Andreas, his wife Casilia, their daughter Victoria, her 2 children, and a maid, were asleep in their farmhouse when an unknown intruder entered their home and ended the lives of everyone inside. This case is even more unusual because the family had been hearing strange noises and finding mysterious footprints leading up to the murders, leading some to believe the farm was haunted. It wasn't until 4 days after the crimes that the bodies were discovered by neighbors who grew suspicious of the farm's silence. Upon entering the house, they found the lifeless bodies of the entire Gruber family and their maid lying on the floor in a horrific scene. They had been bludgeoned with a blunt object, and the killer had taken their time with each victim, even the youngest child. In the weeks leading up to the murders, the Gruber family had reported strange occurrences on their farm. For example, they heard footsteps in the attic but found nothing when they investigated. They also reported finding mysterious footprints in the snow leading to their house but could never trace their origin. They mentioned missing objects and hearing strange noises such as knocking on their walls. Despite these odd events, the family continued with their daily lives, not giving them much thought. The investigation into the Hinterkaifeck murders was one of the most extensive of its time. Authorities found no motive for the killings or clues about who the killer might be. The investigation took a bizarre turn when police discovered that the killer had stayed on the farm for several days after the murders. The murderer had eaten the family's food and tended to the livestock. Police found evidence of the killer's stay, including cigarette butts and footprints leading in and out of the house. Several theories have been proposed about who might have committed the Hinterkaifeck crimes. One theory suggests the killer was a relative of the Gruber family, as Andreas Gruber was known to have disputes with family members over land and property. Another theory posits that the suspect was a former lover of Victoria who returned to the farm and committed the atrocities out of jealousy. However, the theory that gained the most attention at the time is that the farm was haunted. The strange occurrences leading up to the crimes and the killer's apparent stay on the farm have led many to believe it was cursed. Some even believe the perpetrator could have been a ghost seeking revenge against the family for disturbing the peace. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the strangest and most unsettling unsolved mysteries to me. As a curiosity, the farmhouse where the events took place has been demolished, and a memorial now stands in its place, reminding visitors of the tragic events that occurred there. Case 3, the Yuba County Five-In. February 1978, 5 young men with disabilities disappeared in a California forest on their way home from a basketball game. Although the bodies of 4 of them were found months later, the case continues to baffle investigators to this day. On February 24, 1978, 5 men from Yuba City, California, Jackie Hewitt, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, Ted Weiher, and Gary Mathias, made plans to attend a college basketball game in Chico, California. The men, who struggled with mild developmental disabilities or psychiatric conditions, were affectionately called the Boys by their loved ones. Soon, however, they became known nationwide as the Yuba County Five. Surveillance footage from a convenience store captured the group buying snacks and drinks after the basketball game, likely the last time anyone saw them alive. After a search that lasted several days, police located Jack Madruga's car stuck in a snowbank on a remote road in the Plumas National Forest, far from the route the men were supposed to take between Chico and Yuba City. However, there was no trace of the friends. It wasn't until the snow melted several months later, in June 1978, that their fate would be revealed. The bodies of 4 of the Yuba County 5 were discovered in the forest, scattered within a 20-mile radius of the car. Gary Mathias's remains were never found, and to this day, no one knows what happened to the young men or why they were in the forest in the first place. The 5 men from Yuba City, aged between 24 and 32, lived at home with their families and had disabilities but were independent enough to spend time alone and take short trips. Madruga owned a Mercury Montego, which he used to drive the group. They all played basketball together at the Yuba City Vocational Rehabilitation Center and were looking forward to participating in a Special Olympics tournament in Sacramento on February 25. The tournament winners would receive a week-long trip to Los Angeles, and they were determined to win. The night before the tournament, however, they had another basketball game to attend. The men piled into Madruga's Mercury and drove 50 miles to California State University in Chico to watch the team play against UC Davis. After the game, they stopped at a convenience store to buy candy and chocolate milk for the trip home. A witness saw them leave heading toward Yuba City, but they never arrived. The next morning, their parents noticed their sons hadn't returned home. They weren't the type to stay out all night and wouldn't have willingly missed their basketball tournament. Madruga's mother called the police, and the search for the Yuba County 5 began. By sheer luck, a U.S. Forest Service ranger stumbled upon the car stuck in a snowbank in the Plumas Forest on February 27. The remote road was nearly 50 miles in the opposite direction of the route they should have been taking. Apart from the car, there was no evidence indicating the men had been there. It didn't even seem as though they had tried to move the vehicle, despite 5 adult men being capable of lifting it from the snowbank. The keys were missing. Police immediately began searching the surrounding woods, but a brutal winter storm forced them to halt operations. Then, a man named Joseph Shans came forward with a strange story about the night of February 24. Shans had been driving on the same remote road to check on his cabin in the forest when he too got stuck in a snowbank. He suffered a heart attack while trying to free his vehicle and collapsed in pain, unable to move. Around 11:30 p.m., he noticed headlights on the road. He claimed several men got out of a car along with a woman holding a baby. He called for help, but the group stopped talking and disappeared. Sean said he saw flashlight beams again about 2 hours later, but no one ever came to assist him. When he recovered enough to attempt walking down the mountain for help, Madruga's car was in the spot where he had seen the group of men the previous night. That it's unclear whether Shans actually saw the Yuba County 5, whether they were indeed with a woman and a baby, or whether he imagined the entire encounter in a pain-induced haze. His story only added to the mystery. However, it was all investigators had to work with until the snow melted in the spring. On June 4, 1978, motorcyclists exploring trails in the Plumas National Forest came across a Forest Service trailer 20 miles from where Madruga's car had been found. Curious, they opened the door and were met with a chilling scene. Ted Weiher's body lay on a bed in the trailer, wrapped in sheets, with his feet severely frostbitten. His body was emaciated, and the length of his beard suggested he had been alive for 2 or 3 months after disappearing. Curiously, although Weiher had broken into the trailer, he hadn't opened a locker in the shed containing enough food to feed all 5 men for over a year. Nor had he used the tools, fuel, or propane tank in another shed to keep the trailer warm. It seemed he had simply spent months waiting to die. The next day, investigators found the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling in the forest several miles away. Animals had consumed their bodies. It was unclear whether the men had ever reached the trailer. Shortly after, Jackie Hewitt's shoes and part of his body were found just 2 miles from the trailer. His skull was located 300 feet away. The men's families had countless questions about the discovery. How did they get there? Why did they abandon the car? But one question overshadowed all others. Where was Gary Mathias? To this day, Mathias's body has never been found. His sneakers were discovered in the trailer, suggesting he had been there at some point, but no other trace of him was found. John Thompson, a special agent with the California Department of Justice, stated, "There are no explanations. And 1,000 clues? Every day you have 1,000 clues. Investigators couldn't find evidence that a woman and a baby were ever on the mountain road the night the Yuba County Five disappeared. However, the men's families remained firm in their belief that something sinister happened that night. To this day, the mystery of the Yuba County Five remains unsolved, presenting a frustrating dilemma. Investigators cannot prove a crime was committed that night, but they cannot explain what happened if one wasn't. The case remains active and continues to haunt the Yuba County Police more than 40 years later.